She was the face of elegance in the 90s. Runway lights followed her, cameras adored her, and designers fought to book her. Yasmeen Ghauri wasn't just another model, she was the moment. With her striking features, poised walk, and effortless charm, Yasmeen became a global fashion icon almost overnight. Born in Canada to a Pakistani father and German mother, her exotic look and unique presence shattered industry norms. She walked for Versace, Chanel, Jean-Paul Gaultier, and graced the covers of Vogue and Elle like it was second nature. Supermodels came and went, but Yasmeen? She held something deeper, something unforgettable. But then, just like that, she disappeared. No scandal. No headlines. No public breakdown. At the height of her fame, when the world expected more, Yasmeen Ghauri quietly turned her back on the fashion world. And no one really understood why. One day she was closing shows for the biggest names in fashion. The next she was gone, leaving fans, photographers, and the entire fashion industry stunned and confused. Was it burnout? Was it the pressure of the spotlight? Or was it something far more personal, something no one saw coming? In a world where fame is worshipped and walking away seems unthinkable, Yasmeen's decision raised questions that still linger today. What made one of the most successful supermodels of her generation give it all up? And why did she choose silence over spectacle? Tonight, we begin her story, not the runway highlights, not the red carpet glamour, but the story of a woman who had it all and made a choice that would leave the world guessing. What really happened to Yasmeen Ghauri? Stay with us, because the truth behind her graceful exit might just change how you see fame forever. Before Yasmeen Ghauri ever stepped onto a catwalk, she was just a quiet girl from Montreal. Raised in a strict household, her upbringing was anything but glamorous. Her father, a devout Pakistani Muslim, wanted a traditional life for his daughter, definitely not one filled with cameras, flashing lights, and high fashion. Yasmeen's early life was shaped by discipline, cultural expectations, and a desire to stay under the radar. She worked part-time at McDonald's as a teenager, far removed from the fashion capitals she would later rule. Modeling wasn't just unlikely, it was unthinkable. But fate had something else in mind. Discovered while walking through a mall, her life changed overnight. Offers started coming in. Agencies were intrigued by her sharp cheekbones, commanding presence, and the kind of grace that couldn't be taught. She moved to New York and quickly became the industry's next obsession. Yet while the world admired her, not everyone approved. Her father strongly disapproved of her career, and it created a painful rift in her family. Yasmeen kept most of that private, but those close to her knew the emotional weight she carried behind the scenes. Fame, for her, wasn't freedom, it was a balancing act between personal values and public image. She powered through, walking for high-end designers, fronting massive campaigns for brands like Victoria's Secret, Chanel, and Hermès. She was often the only South Asian face in rooms filled with Eurocentric beauty standards, yet she stood tall, confident, and graceful. But even with all the recognition, something seemed off. Those who worked with her say Yasmeen was never fully at ease in the spotlight. She showed up, delivered perfection, then disappeared into the background as quickly as she came. She rarely attended after parties or mingled with the elite crowd. There was always this quiet distance, like she was in the world but not of it. And slowly, people started to notice. She didn't chase headlines. She didn't feed the fame. She simply worked, smiled, and vanished again. It wasn't just unusual, it was unsettling. In an industry built on noise, Yasmeen Ghauri was silence. Beautiful, mysterious silence. But behind that silence, something was building. Something that would soon lead to her sudden and complete withdrawal from the world she once ruled. As Yasmeen's fame grew, so did the pressure. The fashion world looked glamorous from the outside, but behind the velvet curtains was a life built on constant scrutiny, endless travel, and unrealistic expectations. Yasmeen was praised for her unique look, but at the same time, she had to conform to the rigid beauty standards of the early 90s. There were always comments about weight, about image, about perfection. She was expected to smile through exhaustion, deliver perfection on demand, and stay quiet when things got overwhelming. It wasn't just modeling, it was performance at every level, and it slowly chipped away at her spirit. While her career was thriving, her personal life was full of quiet battles. There was the distance growing between her and her family, especially her father. Some said they had stopped speaking. Others claimed she was torn between two worlds, one where she honored her roots, and another where she represented a bold new face for global fashion. Neither side gave her peace. Friends said Yasmeen often kept to herself backstage, polite but distant. She rarely opened up, even when others around her began struggling publicly. It was like she was holding everything in, protecting something. Or maybe hiding something. Rumors began swirling. Some believed she was tired of being objectified, that the industry never really saw her, only the image. Others whispered about health issues or secret heartbreaks. But nothing was ever confirmed. Yasmeen kept her life so private, even her colleagues couldn't piece the puzzle together. And yet, as her face continued to appear on magazine covers and in high-end campaigns, a strange silence hovered around her. Something didn't match. The woman on the page looked untouchable. But those who saw her behind the scenes said she looked tired, mentally, emotionally, even spiritually. The tension reached its quiet peak when she walked in a show and didn't return the next season. No statement. No press release. Just absence. The fashion world, known for chewing up talent and moving on, barely paused. But those who had followed her journey felt the loss. A supermodel in her prime doesn't just leave without a reason. And for Yasmeen, the reason was deeper than any headline could explain. She had everything the world told her she should want. But something inside her was slowly breaking. And soon, that quiet inner storm would push her to make the most unexpected decision of her life. By the mid-90s, Yasmeen Ghauri had reached a level of fame most models only dreamed of. Her face was everywhere, from Times Square billboards to luxury perfume ads. She was still walking the biggest runways, still closing shows for elite designers, but something had clearly shifted. Photographers noticed it first. Her once effortless energy now carried a strange heaviness. In interviews, she was guarded, offering polite smiles, but very little depth. Behind the beauty and the flawless poses, there was a growing sense of distance, like she was slowly pulling away from the world she once conquered. Those who worked with her began to sense the change. Makeup artists whispered about her showing up to shoots quiet and distracted. Designers noticed she no longer showed excitement for fittings or campaign launches. One stylist recalled how Yasmeen sat in silence during a break, staring out a window, lost in thought. When asked if she was okay, she only nodded and said, "Just tired." But this wasn't the kind of tired that sleep could fix. It was the kind of tired that came from pretending too long, from carrying weight no one else could see. Whispers began to grow louder. Was she done with the industry? Was she preparing for something big? Or was she simply falling apart behind the scenes? Rumors swirled about burnout, about tension with agencies, even about pressure from family who never truly supported her journey. Some speculated that being the first South Asian woman to rise so high in a Eurocentric world came with pressures no one could understand. She wasn't just a model, she was carrying a silent responsibility, and it was wearing her down. Then came the night that changed everything. Yasmeen was booked to walk in a major fashion show, one of the biggest events of the season. The front rows were packed, cameras were ready, and her name was printed on the lineup. But when it was time for her to appear, she didn't come out. At first, everyone thought it was a delay. Maybe a wardrobe issue. Maybe a cue missed. But as the show ended, it became clear Yasmeen Ghauri was gone. No explanation. No goodbye. Just silence. That night, the fashion world held its breath. No one saw it coming. And no one knew what had happened to one of its brightest stars. The fashion world was stunned by Yasmeen Ghauri's sudden disappearance from the runway, but what followed made the mystery even deeper. Days passed. Then weeks. No public statement. No interviews. Her agency refused to comment, and her peers, other models, photographers, stylists, were just as confused. Her last scheduled campaigns were quietly canceled or replaced with new faces. Fashion magazines that once featured her now acted as if she had never existed. It was as if Yasmeen had simply vanished, without explanation or trace. But then something strange happened. A tabloid published a blurry photo taken outside a small bookstore in Montreal. The headline read, "Supermodel hiding in plain sight?" The woman in the photo wore a long coat, sunglasses, and had her hair pulled back. It wasn't clear if it was Yasmeen, but the posture, the cheekbones, it looked like her. Still, no one could confirm it. And she didn't respond. The article stirred curiosity, but it faded fast, replaced by newer scandals and rising stars. But a few dedicated fans didn't let it go. They began to dig deeper, sharing sightings online, pointing out small clues, an old friend's social post, a quiet donation under her name, a birth record. Something was happening beneath the surface, and the clues pointed to one thing. Yasmeen Ghauri had walked away from fashion not to escape the spotlight, but to live a completely different life. That twist sent shockwaves through her followers. Was she living under a new name? Had she found peace in a life away from cameras? Some speculated she had become deeply spiritual. Others believed she had gone back to her roots, reconnected with family, and rejected everything the industry had built around her. And then came the most unexpected detail of all. Someone close to the industry quietly mentioned that Yasmeen had turned down a major comeback offer. A global brand wanted her for their anniversary campaign, huge money, full creative control, her face back on billboards. She refused. Not with drama. Just a simple no. That's when people began to realize this wasn't a retreat. It was a decision. And that decision raised even more questions. Why would someone with so much power, fame, and influence walk away at her peak and then reject it again years later? What was she protecting? Or better yet, what was she afraid of returning to? Because behind all the talk of pressure and burnout, there was another layer that no one wanted to explore. What if the industry itself had broken her trust? What if something had happened that pushed her not only to walk away, but to erase her presence from it altogether? As the silence around her deepened, the mystery became bigger than the woman herself. Now, it wasn't just about a supermodel who vanished. It was about a truth no one had uncovered yet, one that could shake the very image the fashion world tried to sell. And Yasmeen Ghauri was the only one who knew how deep it really went. Years passed in silence, and then, out of nowhere, Yasmeen Ghauri finally spoke. It wasn't through a flashy interview or a magazine spread, but a quiet podcast episode hosted by a friend from her early modeling days. The episode had no promotion, no ads, just a simple title, "Why I Left." Listeners were stunned. Her voice was calm, older, but still unmistakably Yasmeen. She spoke openly for the first time, not about the fashion shows or the covers, but about the pain she carried behind them. She admitted the pressure had become unbearable, that the industry's obsession with control, appearance, and perfection had left her feeling like a product, not a person. But the true turning point came when she shared something no one expected. During the height of her career, she had secretly suffered a serious health scare. Stress-induced, ignored for too long, and worsened by the non-stop demands of modeling. She didn't name names or blame anyone directly, but the message was clear: her life had been in danger. And it was that wake-up call, lying alone in a hospital bed, that made her walk away. She realized that fame wouldn't save her. It might have even killed her. The world listened in silence. Fans cried. Industry insiders shifted uncomfortably. She had made a choice not out of weakness, but strength. Her quiet exit was a final act of reclaiming her identity, of choosing life over legacy. But just when it seemed the mystery had been solved, Yasmeen added one last detail. At the very end of the podcast, almost like a whisper, she said, there were other girls. Younger. Hurting. I couldn't watch it happen again. She didn't elaborate, but that one line hit hard. It wasn't just about her own pain. She had seen others being swallowed by the same system, and she walked away not just to survive, but to break the cycle. That was the twist no one saw coming. Yasmeen Ghauri hadn't just disappeared. She had quietly made sure others wouldn't have to. And while she may have left the spotlight, her shadow still lingers in the stories she didn't tell, in the silence that protected her truth, and in the legacy of walking away when it mattered most. After that quiet podcast episode, Yasmeen Ghauri didn't return to the spotlight, and she didn't need to. Her voice, soft but powerful, had already done more than any magazine cover or runway walk ever could. The fashion world, once obsessed with her image, now had something more meaningful to hold on to: her truth. That single moment shifted the narrative. She wasn't just the supermodel who vanished. She was the woman who chose herself. And that choice gave others permission to do the same. In the months that followed, industry blogs and fashion insiders started to reflect on her story. Younger models referenced her in interviews, saying they admired her for walking away with dignity. Brands began taking subtle steps toward protecting their talent, ensuring health and mental well-being were no longer secondary concerns. Her story echoed through the industry, not in loud statements, but in quiet changes that mattered. Yasmeen never asked to be a role model. But by disappearing, she became one anyway. She never confirmed whether she helped other models behind the scenes, but a few spoke anonymously, saying a former top model had reached out to them years ago, just when they were thinking about quitting. Whether it was her or not didn't matter. What mattered was the reminder that someone had been there, had seen it all, and chose a different path. Today, Yasmeen Ghauri lives far from the world she once ruled. She keeps her life private, rarely posting, rarely speaking. And yet, her name continues to be searched, remembered, and spoken with a quiet kind of respect. In a world where visibility is often mistaken for value, her story stands out. She didn't just leave modeling, she rewrote what it meant to leave on your own terms. Yasmeen had it all: fame, beauty, power. But in the end, she chose peace. She chose a life no one could take from her, far from the cameras, free from expectations. And maybe that's what made her unforgettable, not the runway walks or the covers, but the moment she said no more and meant it. Her silence became her voice. And her disappearance? That was her legacy.